Thank you, Warren.
And welcome to the Down in Front Podcast, the official podcast of downinfrontpodcast.com. Thanks so much for tuning in. Thanks so much for joining. If this is your first episode hanging out with us, we always want to start off with saying thank you for hanging out and reviewing movies, TV shows, and a bunch of other stuff. What we usually do here is we review a bunch of different things, all over having an alcoholic beverage sometimes. Other times it could be just regular beverages, so it doesn't necessarily have to be alcohol. But tonight we're going to give you a full review of How to Train Your Dragon 3, but How to Train Your Dragon: The Hidden World. So runtime is about 1 hour and 44 minutes, directed by Dean DeBlois. Hopefully I said his name correctly, but probably not. But before we get into the actual movie, the spoiler section, we always try to add a bit of the stuff on our own of what else we've been watching and what we currently are drinking right now. So I'm going to toss it to one of my favorite human beings in the world, Brilund, the Mouth of the South. What's going on, man? What you been sipping on? And what else have you been watching?
Hey, Warren. How's it going? That's awesome. This evening, I am drinking my Four Sigmatic coffee, so I am staying alert and awake with that. But other than that, I checked out this little animated short that was released online by Pixar called Kitbull. And did you see this, Warren? Did you watch this?
I haven't seen it. I saw a couple of headlines about it, but I didn't get a chance to watch it yet.
Yeah. Well, the neat thing about this short is it's Pixar's first what they call a Sparkshort. So if you think of their shorts that they show before the Pixar films, these are even lesser or lower budgets and even shorter stories that they're telling, usually about 8 minutes or so. But they still have all the really cool creativity and feelings. I mean, essentially this one does, compared to something like Bao or Paperman and things like that. But I like that they are doubling down on producing this type of creative storytelling. I think the shorts are probably the best thing Pixar has been doing the past couple of years compared to the movies they've released. And I think that this is a really neat lead-in and a cool way to preview content that they're going to have as an example on their new Disney Plus platform, because the Spark Shorts, this is released just to show people, okay, we're going to be producing this content on a regular basis for the Disney Plus platform, which I think is a really neat preview to check out. And it's definitely one of the more heartfelt stories they've told. And it also gets very, very dark. So it's definitely a different style of story that's told by Pixar as well, but still great.
I mean, that'd be cool. Just the fact that you said it's pretty dark, I definitely want to check it out, because I think that's one thing that I've always wanted a bit more from their movies and their shorts that we got from Bao, but at a different... That's why I love Bao so much, because that was something completely different than we've gotten before. But as much as... I don't know if I can agree with you that the digital shorts have been better than the movies recently, but I think I know what you mean, especially because majority of these movies we've been getting from Pixar are all trilogies, or another movie coming out from a sequel, so it's something in the same universe, and we haven't really gotten a feel of something fresh that hasn't quite been done before anywhere else.
It's been a while.
Yeah.
Yeah, other than that, I tuned in for about the last half of the Oscars, so I was watching that. For the most part, I thought the Oscars went as expected. There were a few surprises. Okay. Green Book taking Best Picture, that probably very surprising to a lot of people.
Huge surprise to me because I found out the next day when I woke up. I did not watch them. I was like, "Oh, really? Oh, okay."
Yeah." And I haven't seen that movie yet, so I cannot judge if it's worthy of that Best Picture win. But congratulations to them on that. But also, Alfonso Cuarón won Best Director, almost fifth in the row for Mexican directors, which is fantastic. And probably my other big surprise was First Man winning Best Visual Effects. Which is, I mean, cool. Like, First Man's an amazingly well-created film, and when it comes to visual effects, yeah, it's not in your face like Infinity War. They do a fantastic job of just kind of blending the real footage from the moon landing into that story they were trying to tell as well.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't watch the Oscars. I had a couple thoughts, but I really need to go back and listen to our previous podcast when we talked about the initial nominations. I mean, watching Green Book and looking at the other Best Pictures, I really felt as though that it needed to go to favorite. I liked Green Book. I really, really enjoyed that movie. There's a bunch of stuff that's circling outside of the movie itself. But, about like how it came from, how the story became, how they treated the actual people. But I really, really enjoyed and loved that movie, and I think that was at least exactly what we needed at the time. Also, as a nice reminder, at least to me, that everything's still not okay just because one movie or you drove a guy around for a little bit. Like, it's all about building and kind of changing behaviors as a whole. So I enjoyed the movie. I don't think it should have gotten Best Picture, but as long as it wasn't Bohemian Rhapsody, I'm okay with that. And
or
Black
Vice.
Klansman, or Vice. I mean, there's a lot on that list. That list needs to go away. I'm a little confused about the special effects and how they grade. Like we talked about before, I'm so confused of how they're grading some of these winners and how they're judging these winners, because the special effects for Special Man, First Man, was actually really, really good for that last sequence, or when they go up to the moon and shoot in the moon. I think that was a phenomenal 25 minutes. But there's movies over 2 hours that's doing that probably better. So I don't know how they judge that, but I'm glad it won something, because I know there's some other stuff that won Best Score that I don't think I went along with, but I got to look at the winners and see.
Yeah. I mean, Best Score was Black Panther, so...
Yeah, no, I didn't agree with that.
Ludwig Göransson won that. It was neat to find out that him and... who's the director of Black Panther? Ryan Coogler.
Oh, okay.
That they're college buddies, and they've been actually working on each other's films since they were in college. So that was a neat little fact to learn. Nice. But I kind of like how they did the Oscars this year. This is the one where they had no host, so it was just randomly getting celebrities to actually deliver the nominations and announce the winners and announce the next musical guests and stuff. So it's always kind of random. You don't know who you were going to expect. So it was cool to see some pleasant surprises. Like, I think Melissa McCarthy and Brian Tyree Henry did a funny dress up part where they were doing best costume, which was funny. But I thought also they took some neat creative chances with introductions of certain parts. So for the play for Shallow, you just start hearing the song play, and then Bradley Cooper and Lady Gaga just step out from the audience and walk up on stage and start singing, which is it was done really well. So I feel like this Oscars actually flowed pretty well for not having a host to fill in for a big musical number. The opening number was very straightforward with Queen and Adam Lambert doing Queen songs, and then at the end, since Julia Roberts gave out the last award, she just pretty much said, "I guess that's it. We're done. Have a great night," and that was it. So
wow.
So it was neat ways of cutting time, I thought, even though it still was super long.
And I mean, I wonder if they're going to adopt this from now. Like, I wonder if there's still going to be hosts or not, or what sort, like, if their viewership went up or down because of there was no hosts, if it mattered at all.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I'm pumped to talk about it. I know that we're probably going to be talking about the Oscars for a long time, especially now that it's in 2019. Still a bit surprised that Won't You Be My Neighbor wasn't on there, so I'm kind of glad that the Oscars is now behind us. Like, let's look forward and see what we got to see if
Spider-Man and Bao won.
Which they better. I went and looked back. I'm like, okay, good. Like, because if Bao or Spider-Man wouldn't have won, I was like, okay, no. Incredibles 2, no. Well, Brilund, as always, it's great to see your face. It's great to have you on. I'm excited to get your thoughts and opinions for our movie that we're reviewing tonight, How to Train Your Dragon: The Hidden World. My name is Warren. I will be your host this evening. I am currently sipping on a vodka and sweet tea combination, which is pretty much standard now. It's pretty good. And so I actually got an opportunity. I saw that one of the original creators of the show, Jesse, which we usually talk about a lot, he actually was talking about watching the Umbrella Academy on Netflix right now. Brilund, have you seen it yet?
I have not watched it yet. I'm waiting to finish my other, like, mysterious superpowered teen Academy show first.
There's a lot.
Yeah, it seems to be like the trend this year in TV is like school of kids that have superpowers or incredible skills.
Yep. But I think it's kind of funny. It's actually really weird because one of the reasons why I was into it, besides it like popping up everywhere, was one of the main guys played in Misfits on. It's like a British.
Oh yeah, Misfits is awesome.
Yeah, British. Bunch of kids, superpowers. Yeah, we get it. Yeah. So he was actually in that. So I was actually curious to see how he goes. How is he's doing an American kind of character? So that's kind of pretty cool. Overall, I'm only in season 1, episode 2 or 3. I think a lot of people are saying that there's a slow build up, and I'm like, I'm not about these slow build ups. If they're an hour long each, that's 3 hours of my life I can do elsewhere. I can do other stuff with. But it still is pretty entertaining. I think they leave in a good amount of breadcrumbs, and they are kind of forming a story. It does seem that the story is a little bit messy or kind of all scattered, which could be because that it could be intended that way. So I'm curious about it. I'm going to kind of stick it out and watch a few more episodes. I think I do enjoy the actual season. I'd say if you like that sort of superpowered mystery solving shows, definitely go check it out. On Netflix. I'm not entirely sure how many teenagers. Yeah, if you like teenagers, I'm not sure how many episodes. I want to say 10, maybe. I'll have to look it up to see. But definitely go check that out. At least the Umbrella Academy, that is on Netflix, and that is all I've been watching. So, as we usually like to do, I'm going to go and raise my beautiful, beautiful Blue Yeti. As we dedicate a couple sips to our wonderful fans and supporters and listeners. So, Mr. Brilund, who are you dedicating your sip to tonight?
I'm going to dedicate my sip to one of the Avengers. I've been dedicating my sips to a lot of them, but this one goes to the captain himself, Chris Evans. Not only is Captain America, but he's also a really nice guy in real life. And if you're watching the Oscars when Regina King won Best Supporting Actress. She had trouble getting up the steps, but Chris Evans was there to swoop in, offer his arm to her, and help her get up the stairs so she didn't fall over her dress or anything like that. So here's to you, Chris Evans, for being a gentleman.
There you go. Thank you, Mr. Evans. What a sweetheart. I'm going to dedicate my sips to the one and only Emmett Hall for being amazing and having a great sort of a trip that we had last weekend. But the other big sips to goes to a place called the Covered Bridge Farm Table Restaurant and Bar in New Hampshire, where they served me a delicious hot buttered whiskey. Brilund, as a man who knows his whiskeys, have you ever had a hot buttered whiskey before?
I have not had a hot buttered whiskey.
Oh my goodness. I've
had a whiskey.
Yeah. Oh, well, this one had like small, because it was like an apple cider that they had like chunks of butter that was like in it, but it was quite delicious. Delicious. Yeah. I will make sure, I will try to remember to post the photo or link everybody to my Instagram, because goddamn, that drink was just dangerous. I only could have one, but super boozy. So hot buttered whiskey cider, I think is the name of it. It is quite delicious. Here's my sip to you. Thank you, Covered Bridge, because that meal we had was amazing. So we are good to go on talking about review. So if you have not seen How to Train Your Dragon: The Hidden World, this is the time that we want to say you may want to stop this actual recording. This is your spoiler warning, because we will be spoiling your movie from here after. So hit pause, go check it out. Definitely a family-friendly film, especially with the rush of movies that's going to be coming out really, really soon. So if you want something a little bit different, a little bit earlier, definitely go check this out. Stay tuned for a full spoiler edition review of How to Train Your Dragon: The Hidden World. And we are back, and we are the Down in Front podcast. My name is Warren. I have Brilund, the mouth of the South, and we are giving you a full spoiler edition of How to Train Your Dragon: The Hidden World. Again, if you haven't seen the movie, we will be ruining it and spoiling, so feel free to keep going if you like. As we usually do, we're going to break it up into a couple different sections. So we're going to talk about the acting and story, also how the story in this particular movie fits into the rest of the universe of How to Train Your Dragon. We're going to talk about a bit of the action, and we're going to talk about the FX. Then we're going to leave off into our conclusions, usually when we talk about if you should or shouldn't go watch this movie and what other parameters kind of follow that question. So I'm going to toss it over to Mr. Brilund. And Brilund, talk to me about the acting and the story and just in general how this newest film kind of fits into the universe of How to Train Your Dragon.
Yeah, so I'll start by saying when I first saw How to Train Your Dragon, when the first one came out long time ago, I was curious about it. I thought it would be just like a nice, fun, solid animated film that wasn't like the Pixar blockbuster that year. And it was a movie I went and saw, and I was definitely pleasantly surprised that it was a movie that was full of heart, full of story. It didn't talk down to its audience, which was really cool. And it was also a story that took risks. Like, one thing that really stands out for me from the first How to Train Your Dragon is even though the hero Hiccup wins at the end, he also sacrifices something. He loses something out of his journey. And I thought that was really cool to make sure the audience saw that you might win in the end, or you might triumph over a huge obstacle, but it also might cost you something, so don't be shocked if that happens. And in this case, it's Hiccup's leg. The second film, I felt like it was more of a just more action-adventure type tale, very plainly told, and I feel that this movie kind of follows that same blueprint with the story. We still get the major characters here, Hiccup and Astrid. They do a fine job, like Jay Baruchel and America
Ferrera.
America Ferrera, yeah. She's fine as Astrid. Nothing that I felt that kind of extended or expanded on the characters in this movie. I mean, it kind of felt like everything they were going to do was pre-planned, and everything is like, eventually we'll get to the wedding scene, or eventually we'll get to the scene where we beat the bad guy. Yeah. And so it was kind of like the characters kind of just waiting for the next motion to happen in it. So it felt a little not as heartfelt as the original movie felt.
Yeah, I agree, because it felt like they were kind of tipping their hand, and not the greatest use of foreshadowing. They were literally telling us what was going to happen, whereas foreshadow was kind of hinting of, oh, this is something interesting. They literally was telling us what was going to happen later on in the movie. And I thought that was kind of a bummer. Just like, oh, that's weird. Okay, you've already told me what's going to happen, and I should kind of show that. So, thanks, I guess. The thing that I was kind of bummed about, especially in regards to Astrid and Hiccup, was I wanted to see more of that character growth, but it really felt like Hiccup's mother was just telling Astrid what to do. And she didn't come up with those ideas naturally herself, right? She was trying to kind of be motherly to Astrid to kind of get her on that particular kind of path and instill more leadership. And maybe she's trying to say, instead of the mom telling the son what to do, how about Astrid will just tell Hiccup and how to instill his confidence? But why couldn't that be different? You know, I was really curious to see maybe Hiccup doesn't need to be the chief. Like, let's break down some of these things that you already started doing in movie 1 to make movie 3 a bit more entertaining, because it did feel a bit stale.
Yeah. As far as like some of the side characters, I did like some of the humor they tried to instill in the movie, like with was it Snotlout and Roughnut? I mean, they're funny twins, but their shtick also wears really quickly. Like, I mean, the first couple of times I like Snotlout's whole thing about his full-grown beard, and then after the third time I was like, okay, and then the fourth time, okay, and then it just got annoying. And then when they finally do something with the joke, it's like, all right, I guess you did that. Yeah. So they kind of beat those little jokes down with a baseball bat, so it's kind of bad. But I did like how Roughnut was just like uncontrollable, like talk box, and was just constantly talking, and I found it funny that they got her in a room with like the main bad guy, and when she was talking, he was probably pretty much expressing what the audience was feeling at the same time through that entire scene. But I felt like that was one of the more entertaining scenes of the movie as well because of that reason.
Yeah, I guess my only bummer thing is that we've seen this bit multiple times, and now that we saw it in this movie, we've seen this bit multiple times done better. And it was just kind of a bummer. I think one of the last one was Despicable Me did it, like multiple movies too. And so we can kind of get it. It's kind of funny. It just kind of came out of nowhere. And, you know, talking about Roughnut and I can't remember her brother's name. Snotlout, yeah. Like, they introduce this joke, and then they spend the next 90 minutes beating this joke into you as if this is not the third movie. And I get if these jokes are starting from movie number 1 and then this is the conclusion of it, but it just felt like this is a new joke that they introduced into this movie that they didn't want to give up. And I just felt like it was a lot of filler, especially the entire sequence with Roughnut and Grimmel talking. It just seemed like that was filler. They didn't have anything else to do, so they wanted to put an annoying sequence into the movie. It's kind of a bummer.
Yeah, and I think that's one thing about this movie that really hurts it is that nothing really exceptionally stands out besides from the visuals of this movie. Mm-hmm. And so, like, even when we're introduced to Grimmel, when he first unveils, like, his mask, or takes off his mask and shows his face, it's like, he pretty much looks like a carbon copy of Count Dooku. And, like, having the other three, like, greedy, like, Viking chieftains there that kind of look like they all come from, like, the Separatist planets and stuff. And you're like, I've seen this movie before.
Yeah, I thought I felt pretty bad because I think one of the things I wanted to do was rewatch the first 2 movies before watching this one. And so when Grimmel pops up and he does his huge reveal and we get some of his backstory, I'm like, oh shit, am I supposed to know who this person is? And then as the movie goes along, you're like, oh, maybe not, or maybe it was something that was like lightly mentioned in the first movie. Can you remember anything about this character and his family at all? Because it seems to be like it was this huge thing as him killing these Oh crap! What's the name of Toothless Dragon? He's
a Dark Fury.
Night Fury.
Or Night Fury.
Yeah.
Night Fury.
So I was like, well, maybe it has something to do with his family going way back from the movie number 1, but nothing paid off, and so it just feels like they were inserting a lot of stuff, trying to extend a story that had a pretty good ending already, and I'll talk about that in a moment. But it was like, hey, we have a really great idea, but we don't know how to get from point A to point B. There's something in the middle that we have to figure out, and that's the moments that we're filled with.
Yeah, absolutely. There are times like I found it weird how they handled Grimmel, because he's built up to be like this ultimate like dragon hunter, dragon killer, badass, and we barely get to see him kind of show that. I mean, all his things that we see are like, oh, his plan's already into effect because you've already walked into the room with him, and so, oh, surprise, the ambush is happening now. Yeah. And that was like pretty much the MO for his whole character the whole time. Like, he even has these very unique dragons that he calls dragon hunters that he's tamed to his with their own chemicals that they actually produce, and it's interesting to see. Yeah, this is a kids' film, but you have these scorpion-like dragons that have these stingers and everything, but they never use them because it's a kids' movie, and so the only way you see like what they're actually capable of is through these little needle darts that knock out dragons. So it was kind of weird to see all these safe choices being made for the sake of just making sure the movie is family friendly and wholesome, especially when we're talking about Vikings here, raiding boats and everything, freeing dragons. Hiccup has a flame sword that he built on his own, Hiccup Skywalker, and he swings it, but he never hits anybody with it. He just, when the opening happens, he will bonk them on the head with the hilt, and then they're knocked out. Surprise. So I felt like it kind of made the movie feel like kind of like a old direct-to-DVD sequel because of that.
Yeah.
That it felt like they weren't confident enough to kind of go with the maturity that they established in the first film.
Should it be Hiccup Dondarrion?
Hiccup Dondarrion?
Yeah, I mean, that's a excellent analysis. That is like the perfect feeling I was getting of. I don't think that's a great move for a PG-13, maybe PG-13 movie. It was just weird, and even some of the jokes when his friend's trying to hit on his mother, and it's like, why are you putting that in the movie? I get the marriage talk, and that's funny, but what? And then the sheer amount I just guess the sheer amount of dragons that they just really felt like they needed to tell us that dragons are captured and we need to learn more and more about their species in each and every type of species, where they just threw that out of the window here. And especially a dragon who spits up lava type of flames that has a stinger. Yeah, acid has a stinger, but their venom in their teeth somehow is a tranquilizing agent, but also at the same time controls people's minds if they wear it. Like, hold up. Just give me one of those. I just need one, and I'm okay. Don't just throw it all in there and try to figure some shit out. And yeah, that's typically a direct-to-DVD is. Yeah, they can just do whatever they want. They're gonna catch the paycheck anyway, right? That's exactly how I feel.
Yeah. I also felt that kind of like it was bad that they leaned into a lot of that stuff, because I think the more interesting part of the story suffered from that, because it kind of played second fiddle to this story of Grimmel and him trying to kidnap all the dragons, which was looking for the home of the dragons, the hidden world. And I found that that was also something that, even though the hidden world felt kind of like going to Pandora, seeing that alien world that you never saw before, that's neon beautiful and glow in the dark and everything, and it still looked amazing, like all those worlds do. But I felt like there was a huge opportunity where they could have explored, like, what makes the hidden world so special? Why is it this the place where dragons come from? If this was where Hiccup wanted to take his people because they're the ones that have learned to live with dragons, what will that mean if they have to live in this more unique ecosystem? And what does it mean to the dragons for that? So I thought they could explore it a lot with the hidden world, but all we get is like about 5 minutes there to see how pretty it is, and then we're gone. That's it.
No, we don't even see it at the end. No, they're not going to show us. They're just going to show us the rock that Hiccup just so happened to be super conveniently at the end of this movie. So it's like, come on, man. Come on. Show me better. Be better.
Absolutely.
Yeah, man, like, I can't agree with all of the actual statements he said. I guess that my biggest thing was it just felt like this entire movie was just so watered down and very poorly constructed. I mean, it's very easy to poke holes, and it's not even poking holes. We're just sitting there and pointing and says, this is a problem on this actual movie. And if you're introducing this villain that we talked about, Grimmel, right, when we talk about the acting story, I was really trying to piece together, okay, what exactly was his plan? Because he enjoys the hunt, apparently. So he's going to basically let the Light Fury. Thank you.
Light Fury.
He's just going to let the Light Fury free. But set a trap for Toothless to try to catch him with a random tranquilizer that's just sitting on the ground. But that didn't work. So he was trying to, like, make Toothless fall in love by releasing the Light Fury.
Yeah,
Did he know that he was going to come, that they were going to fall. So then he knew he was going to fall, that they were going to fall in love. That at a time he's going to go back and lead them to everybody else to capture, but then why? It just didn't make it. It was way too complicated. I was like, oh man.
It was weird. It was like, even when Grimmel was trying to explain it, it was almost like they cut off his sentence so they didn't have to worry about a clear-cut explanation, because he was talking about, like, when Night Fury's they mate for life, and that's all we get from him. And everything else is just like, oh, let's just see where everything happens, and it'll just neatly fall into place that Toothless and his new girlfriend get into trouble, and Hiccup has to save them. So
it just, I mean, like, in the last couple things I want to say about Grimmel was even his plan to infiltrate, and like, he somehow infiltrated their society, but they were already springing a trap on him. He goes, no, I have the upper hand. No, you don't. What do you mean? You don't have the upper hand at all. All you did was call your dragons, and they just burned down the place. I don't think that's a win for you, my friend, but I guess he was just trying to kind of drive them out. The one thing I did have a big issue with, though, was the mind-controlling drugs, or the venom that was coming from these weird dragon scorpions. And the fact that the Light Fury at the end was being controlled because he had, like, a weird head contraption on her. He, like, stuck it in her head.
Yeah.
But Hiccup was able to just slide that right off, and she was fine. So I'm like, wait, was the mind control being in the contraption, or was it being stuck in their actual head? I'm not exactly sure.
Well, you know, you can shake it off after it's out of you.
Yeah, but then I'm not sure. I was like, then why are these dragons being controlled? Just pick one. I was just so taken back. It was just so weird for me. Yeah, overall, the story felt messy. The plot was really easy. Also felt a bit messy. They didn't seem like they knew what they necessarily wanted to do. It felt like some characters were just leaving for the sake of leaving. Like his mom one time goes, hey, I'm going to leave to make sure we weren't followed. You just got there. What do you mean you got to make sure you're not followed? You should have been doing that the entire time. You should be a better hunter than that. So it was just
at least Rough Nut was just like, I never look behind.
Right? I was like, okay, funny. I get that. And then obviously she's going to be followed. But it's kind of weird. It definitely felt like they had an idea of how this movie wanted to end. And I think their idea was, what if Toothless and Hiccup meet when they're older and their parents and they have new perspectives and whatever, right? And I think that was their end goal, right? To see Hiccup with a beard, married to Astrid with children, and we see Light Fury and Toothless married with children, and they have that meeting at the end. And I think they had that thought of this is how they want the movie to end, and they just have to figure out how to get from point A to point B. And to put little fuzzies, and I saw that coming, so I saw the little fuzzes coming on Hiccup's face, and I was like, I'm sure he's going to have a beard at some point in this flash forward, so I'm just waiting for it. So, and this felt kind of boring. It was kind of a bummer. I wanted them to take a bit more risks. I wanted them to be a little bit different. I really, really was feeling, I really wanted Hiccup to die during that falling sequence. Not because I want people to die, but I think it would have been also pretty much, well, sometimes. I think it would have been a pretty fitting way for this movie to end, this entire thing to end, right? Like, we see Hiccups and he has to overcome the loss of his mother, then flips it around. He had to overcome the loss of his father. Now he's have to deal with not only overcoming the loss of Toothless, but everything else that happens, right? And Astrid can go and lead in the village. And then I think it would have been even more impactful if Astrid would have been sailed to the dragon, the hidden world, and made connection with Toothless, and it's her children that's touching Toothless. And I think that would have been a more impactful moment. What we got here was safe, like you said, Brilund, and it was kind of a bummer. And I guess the last thing I did have a big issue with this movie, and I guess it goes on more the acting and the characters, is it definitely felt like they kind of treaded on their own movie, number one, as in, we know that it's okay to be different, but you should still try to be like everybody else. And when Hiccup sacrifices his leg, and we see that Toothless is he doesn't have another tail, so he can't fly. So maybe they have prosthetic, and it's okay to have prosthetic limbs, and you can be just like anything else. And they imbued that a sense of confidence in yourself to be different in movie number one. Whereas everything in this movie felt like they were just, you don't have to worry about that. I can build you something really, really quickly. This was mind-blowing to me. Oh, weird, you need to learn how to fly? Well, instead of me just building this because I knew how to do it, I'm just going to randomly put this tail on you, Toothless, and now you have all the ability to fly with no training, no anything, you're good to go. And I was like, oh, wait, hold up. You just built him a tail, and then that was it? That's a little silly. You gotta act a little bit better on that one. And it just seemed like everything had to just be so normal. They have to live in a normal society. They have to do things because it's what they usually do. I understand that they were moving out of their home to another home. Definitely Thor, Ragnarok-esque. I'm like, yeah, we've seen that before. But it just felt like they just didn't really do anything to really highlight why it's okay to be different. And I really had a big issue with that. So what do you got for me for the action and the visual effects of this movie, Brilund?
I'm just going to plainly say that the visual effects of this movie are fucking beautiful. This is one of the best looking movies I've seen recently. I mean, it's definitely up there with Alita and Infinity War for its visual effects. And what's amazing about it is the moments that we actually get the best storytelling is in the actions of how they use this animation and effects. all through this movie, I was getting the same feel. They did such a good job of displaying the emotion of the characters through the animation, the effects, that I got this feeling of like, oh, I'm actually watching these dragons with these characters. Like, I can get a feeling like these characters, even though they look very hyper-realized action figures brought to life, I can still see how much awe and surprise and amazement they see when they see dragons. And I felt that was really cool that they were able to capture it that way, that you would actually not only feel like, oh, I'm seeing amazing things, but it's like I'm seeing these amazing human beings that are not real also look at other amazing things. And so it actually had this really cool, just heightened sense of hyper-realism to it that I really appreciated. Even when they were doing like everyday things, when they first reveal Burke in this movie, and you see all the dragons, and it's actually beautiful and everything, and then you start to look closer and everything, you see like traffic jams of how to like trying to walk down the roads and stuff, and people bumping into objects and breaking things, and you're like, oh, they meant very well, but now it's actually become a huge burden for them. And that's like amazing, and visual detail that you can build a really cool story off of. That they did have this challenge of like, how can humans and dragons live together without and not get into each other's way at the same time, which I think could have been a very cool theme to the story. But for some reason, they ignore all this amazing animation that's happening in this movie for a very milquetoast story.
Yeah. That's a great line, milquetoast. Yeah, man, it is a bit of a bummer, because I think we've started to see, and I think we've said this the last couple of reviews, is that the movie looked great, looked phenomenal, but it just lacked everything else of what a movie is made of. And I think you're absolutely right. Like besides the story and the characters and the acting that we just recently talked about, the visuals really does tip your hand to this is what you should be focused on, because Burke looked great. The Hidden World looked phenomenal. It was like a mix between Atlantis and a mix between Coco's world. Yeah. So I really like that, like, kind of blendedness that they kind of put in there, which is pretty cool. Again, I would have loved to be there and just have a conversation there. But yeah, like everything else, it didn't seem like they really kind of focus on and care too much of the visual aspects. Like Grimmel's lair didn't care, and like the gang's hideout didn't care. Like there were some shots of the water with all the ships that I thought was pretty cool, but I feel like the story was there just by what you put on the screen, and they chose to, for some strange reason, go a different way.
Yeah, there's points, especially when it comes to the dragons and their behaviors. Like, I loved how they animated the dragons. I love how all the dragons have all their own unique quirks and differentiation to them. I wish they could have explored a little bit more of, like, the hidden world to kind of give us understanding of why all dragons are such a diverse range. I think that would have been pretty neat to try to explore that. But I did love, like, they took this time to kind of have Toothless be a main character with his own, like, moments in the movie, especially with the Light Fury and their little scene on the beach where he's trying to figure out how to do a mating dance with her. I thought it was like one of the more charming scenes of the movie, and it just also nailed like kind of like hiccups in Toothless's friendship. Like, they trust one another so much that when it comes to him meeting like the girl of his dreams, that he would trust Hiccup to help him out with that, which was funny, but also very sweet at the same time. And the more and more they like spend time like showing like Toothless and the Light Fury fly around together and everything, I was telling myself I would rather watch this as a short about what happens to Toothless after How to Train Your Dragon 2 and make that number 3 and be done with it. Because everything with Toothless in the Life here was beautiful.
Yeah, and it's a bummer. Like, again, we've seen this story before in a lot of different instances, but it felt like they had it there with the visuals. They just didn't pull a trigger. Like, we physically saw a silent scene in here, which I thought was great, and it's the same sequence you're talking about with Toothless, the Light Fury, and Hiccup in the bushes giving him signals. An entirely silent sequence that I felt definitely helped us build off of the visual effects, and that leads to story that we were talking about, and it makes sense why Hiccup's helping, but then we don't get that same storytelling and that same character beats and moments with Hiccup and Astrid. Like, we don't see anything that builds them closer together at all. If anything, they're just being basically friends, and all of a sudden you get married at the end. Like, what? So, it just kind of a bummer that they didn't. I just don't know why they just they chose to not do that. And it was weird that we only really saw maybe a couple of dragons sort of like personalities, just a little bit. We got a couple of hints here and there, but not much as that really small, weird dragon that was like oddly popping, reproducing as quickly as possible.
The Hobgoblin dragon.
Yeah. So I thought that was kind of a funny little bit that it kind of kept coming back. And I'm like, we need that with all the dragons. Like, you have a surplus of dragons that you can easily do that with, to give them like one little weird quirk. You did it a couple times, but the weird thing with the baby too also felt kind of strange. So although it looked great, it just didn't make any sense. A lot of sense for some of the choices that they chose to make and what they wanted to share. Yeah,
and the other thing I would just add about the effects is I loved all the design and detailing on the costumes and everything. I like how these Vikings that have learned to live with dragons, their technology, it feels kind of I would call it dragon punk, where they use the scales for armor and everything, but they also have some advanced skills as well, like making prosthetics. And I was seeing Hiccup actually work on Toothless's tail was really cool. But also all their weaponry and just their armor they make, and I like the design that they have. Hiccup's fire sword is really cool, even though he doesn't use it that much. But I like the hang gliding suits, so showing that they're learning from dragons, which I thought was really cool.
Yeah, I really enjoyed the. I think you hit it right in that. There was one sequence, and there was a lot of small moments in this film that were absolutely stunning. And I'm talking about absolutely gorgeous, when Astrid's dragon flying through the hidden world, and we see that it completely changes color because of what's around it, right? And that was oh man, nothing needs to be said at that point. Hiccup and Astrid's having a conversation, and Hiccup had just finished, creating this prosthetic for Toothless, and he had to paint it black. I thought he would just paint it black, but he was making dragon-proof. So already they've done something amazing that says, hey, these things need to be black to make it dragon-proof so it doesn't burn. That's something that they incorporated within the first 5-10 minutes of this film, which I thought was cool. The way that they took it to the next level, though, is not only do they need to paint it black, but it's how they're going to paint it black with the scales. And we see Toothless kind of scratching, and some of the scales fall off of him. Astrid picks him up, put him in the bowl. Toothless spits in the bowl that melts them down. And you see with a mortar, right? You see with the mortar that Hiccup is grinding this into an actual paste, or grinding this into a paint, switches out, uses a paintbrush to literally paint over, and you can see that it's wet and dry different paint on the tail. It's the detail was absolutely stunning. I was sitting there just completely taken back. I could care less what you're saying at that movie. Just that one sequence was so beautiful. I'm like, wow, these small moments is where you really need to shine. And I felt like it's backdrop, and it was a bummer that it was such backdrop. Even although it's silly that whatever dragon hunter, scorpion dragon, their spit, or like their saliva was catching on fire after it makes contact with something, so it looks like it was acid, but it would ignite on fire. And so I'm like, that is crazy. That is a great sort of concept to try to like wrap your head around and like show to me on screen. I liked somebody to be like, oh, would you look at that? Or like have some appreciation for it here, because it just felt like, oh yeah, this is like normal what we do. And if it's normal, that's okay. Have more things like that throughout the movie, so we as the audience can marvel at these things that you're doing. It was kind of a bummer that it felt like they just kind of ignored and kind of passed up on those opportunities.
Yeah, I mean, the visual effects, like, it's not necessarily about the grandiose stuff. I mean, the small moments definitely shine through there. Like you mentioned, like, I was blown away by, like, the tail painting scene. I thought that was amazing.
Yeah.
And I thought it was really cool, like, all the effects, like, whenever the Light Fury would actually make herself go invisible by shooting the fireball out and just flying through the fireball, I thought was a really cool effect. And I like how Toothless, like, created this new effect where he's almost Godzilla's out and is able to spark and turn invisible that way. So I thought that was also some really neat effects that they had.
I really enjoyed that effect. I just couldn't turn my brain off to say, wait, what?
Well, yeah, what's the purpose of it?
What? How does she?
Well, it helped him get the jump on Grimmel, so.
Yeah, but like, how does she already know how to do that, but he doesn't? And I guess it's anybody who's touching you also becomes invisible, because that's how Hiccup became invisible in the end. There was just a lot of moments. I was like, wait, hold up, what just happened here? And why? But why? I did enjoy it a lot. I thought it was like dragons. Because dragons, right. I thought it was like some weird super speed that he was doing, which I thought was kind of weird. Like, because it also looks like he kind of broke like a barrier when they were going through the actual smoke ring. So I thought that was kind of a pretty cool. I really did love the visual aesthetic of it and the overall look. But again, I really love the visual. But does that make sense? No. It doesn't make sense. And it's tough to get behind something that you're just doing for the sake of it looks cool. Because then at that point, I don't want to watch this movie, you know?
Yeah.
So we talked about the action and effects, and we talked about the acting and the story, all the things about how it fits into the universe. So, Brilund, give me some lasting thoughts and a bit of a conclusion. As you watched already, the How to Train Your Dragon Hidden World, would you recommend this movie? Would you not recommend? And if you would recommend, what's another movie would you tell people to watch beforehand?
So How to Train Your Dragon, The Hidden World, I found it to be an enjoyable film. It's definitely very wholesome, and it has some fun moments. I just feel like it doesn't really bring anything new to the table and feels very cookie-cutter in its story and plot, but still worth seeing if you do want to see some amazing visuals. But I would say, like, other than this film, definitely go back and watch the first How to Train Your Dragon, because that is a phenomenal film and has a fantastic story to it that is all about like being different and learning how to come to terms with that, but also making sure that that's your strength, that your differences are your strength as well. So it's really cool movie. Definitely watch it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I can recommend this movie to go watch it unless you have nothing else to do. I think we had talked about and muddled before that there's just a lot of stuff out there. This movie's almost 2 hours long. I saw it in Dolby. What kind of format did you watch it in?
I saw it in Dolby as well.
Dolby? Okay. So I know there's like 3D budgets and there's some 3D stuff that's out there. I mean, it's probably a very enjoyable movie for children or somebody who's like bought into it. If you're not bought into it, I wouldn't recommend this movie. I'm not saying that it's bad. It was pretty much of a mess. If you take the visuals out, a lot of things just didn't make any sense and didn't hold up. And exactly what Brilund said was, I just say to go back to rewatch number 1 and sort of just forget that number 2 and 3 came out, because I felt like it just kind of kept getting worse and worse as the time kind of went on. So a bit of a bummer, but I guess that some of these times, some of these sort of sequels and trequels or trilogies, sometimes it tends to kind of lose a bit of heart. So kind of a bit of a bummer. So I don't think I can recommend this movie. And with that, we are the Down in Front Podcast. Thanks so much for joining. Thanks so much for tuning in. Mr. Brilund, where can people find more of your work on the interwebs?
You can find me putting a fresh coat of dragon-proof paint on my tweets at Twitter at Brilund, Brilund. That way, when they come with the pitchforks and the torches, that I am safe. But also, you can find me posting many movie and TV reviews on Instagram at I am Brilund. That's always fun as well.
Nice. Check out more of our work at downinfrontpodcast.com, where you can see our bios, you can see our video teasers. We got a couple of different links up there with our Gamecast information, so we have that link for our Twitch. We also put some information in for some of our live streams from our YouTube, so we have lots of information on there, downinfrontpodcast.com. If you're on social media, we're literally everywhere. Search for us, downinfrontpodcast.com, on Twitter at _DIFP. Facebook is facebook.com/downinfrontpodcast. I mean, we're on Reddit. We're on Spotify, so if you like streaming, because I know Brilund's a huge fan of streaming, we actually are streaming, so we're on the Play Store, we're on Spotify. Definitely go check us out. Feel free to subscribe. Please rate us on iTunes. That's also helpful. And if you like what we do, you want to become a supporter to have early episodes and bonus content, consider joining us and being a Patreon. Patreon.com/downinfrontpodcast. Anything and everything's helpful. So we appreciate everybody kind of hanging out. Brilund, what are we reviewing next week?
We are still trying to decide what we're reviewing next week. But we might consult our biggest fan at White Mocha LI. See if they know what we should watch.
We need to hit up this at White Mocha LI. I heard this dude's pretty cool dude.
Yeah, they tried to get White Mocha, but unfortunately the person that owns White Mocha tried to steal some dragons, and he met an unfortunate end because of that. Now we can't get to, or someone can't get to the White Mocha account.
Man, we got to figure that out. So check him out at White Mocha LI on Twitter. Thanks, everybody. We will see you later.
Bye.
I'm trying to think. There's like a big thing.
What's his name? Snuff like Scout Mom. That is David Rice.
Bro, what was that? And why did they keep doing that? You said it.